Hi, everyone. My name is Dr. Rita Roy, CEO at the National Spine Health Foundation, and I'm your host for the Get Back to It podcast, where we tell real stories of healing and recovery. What does it mean to get back to it? It means overcoming injury through treatments that work in order to return to the people and activities you love, whatever that looks like for you. It means getting back to your life. We're here to share the success stories of those who did just that. And some of these stories you are not going to believe. At the Get Back to It podcast, our goal is to tell stories of spinal champions who have been able to achieve a better quality of life through spinal healthcare. Today, we're diving into a new topic, one of our favorites, yoga. Joining me on the show are spine patient Susan G. and her yoga instructor, Sytera Field. Susan tried a variety of non-surgical treatments before finding healing in the practice of yoga. Sytera, founder of SyteraYoga, located in McLean, Virginia, believes that when it comes to the body, injuries, and other challenges, everyone has a story. She's developed unique techniques that encourage people to move in different ways and see their bodies as a whole. Now that you know what to expect, let's dive right into Susan and Sytera's story. Susan's spine health journey began when she experienced back spasms and would lose control of her legs while standing. The experience was debilitating.
Yes, I would be severely impacted for weeks at a time when these back spasms occurred, and I wasn't able to function normally at all. It required pretty much staying in bed for a few hours a day, not being able to drive very well, some pretty changes in lifestyle when these spasms occurred.
As you can probably imagine, it didn't take long for Susan to seek treatment due to the severity of her symptoms. She had an MRI in 2015 that revealed mild to moderate degenerative changes.
Yes, the changes were really around lumbar spine area in the L4, L5. I was diagnosed with central canal stenosis, moderate bilateral neural formial narrowing, and lumbar spondylosis. I'm not sure if the spondylosis includes a disc that was also kind of twisted and backwards, so pretty bad.
With a diagnosis in hand, Susan began seeking a variety of non-surgical treatment options, including chiropractic care, massage therapy, electrical stimulation, and eventually yoga.
Yes, it was really the combination. As my first bad spasm occurred, it was really chiropractic care, therapeutic massage, and then, of course, Sytera's yoga. They were the ideal treatment plan. So carefully and slowly, I began to heal.
When it comes to students facing injuries and chronic conditions, it's important to me that I hear their story. I believe there's an emotional component around each person's story, and sharing that story, it's a pact of trust. I listened to Susan's story when she began attending my classes not long after her diagnosis.
While these methods worked well for Susan, spinal care is never a one-size-fits-all solution. Susan recommends seeking a professional first for formal diagnosis and direction in seeking treatment.
Yes, I tried a variety of methods together, and the most important thing for me, though, I realized was to get a baseline, to work with a surgeon's office or an orthopedic office where I could get my x-rays, my CT scans, so I had a basis of what I was dealing with.
SyteraYoga was a key player in helping Susan get her life back. Sytera herself has a story of healing and recovery that inspired her practice and teaching of yoga.
Yeah, prior to practicing yoga, I had an accident. I broke both bones in my lower right leg after falling off a small cliff. It was pretty dramatic. I was in a wheelchair for a bit, and I had lots of recovery time, as you could imagine. And I needed a bridge from that physical therapy back to my daily life, and yoga was that bridge for me.
Sytera's journey to healing meant that she needed to come to terms with her body in the state that it was in. Rather than solely focusing on physical milestones such as, quote, perfect alignment, she started thinking in terms of good relationships.
Instead of following a textbook in terms of alignment, I would focus instead on the relationships. And for instance, the relationships between my hips and my shoulders, my feet and my head, the right and the left side, and etc. And of course, this helped me see my body as a whole and ultimately helped me to heal. Now I get to help others see their bodies in this way, and it helps them to heal as well.
Sytera makes sure to help students be aware of their limitations, but still believes that yoga can be available to everyone.
It's important to note, I think, that every yoga pose is not for every person at every point in time. Most likely, however, you will be able to find the muscles required to access that pose. So even if you don't get into the full expression of the yoga pose, you're still getting the benefit from the pose. Don't do yoga just to glorify the pose. Rather, do the pose to get a clear picture of where your body is in terms of strength and mobility.
Susan and Sytera, you both have such inspiring stories. I love how you both emphasize the importance of slow and intentional steps when it comes to the healing of your bodies. You took action and didn't allow yourselves to be paralyzed by fear, but you were also kind to yourselves in the process. I'd love to hear from both of you on how you think this mindset of grace and intentionality has impacted your outcomes. Sytera, you are getting ready to start a spinal series in your yoga practice. Can you tell me about that, and tell me about sort of, the mindset that you encourage people to come into when they come into your practice?
For sure. So, going back to the idea of having, of sort of observing the relationships going on in your body, right? So of course there's that mind body component, which we all, hear of, but we don't really quite know how it, what it means, in your daily life. And so what I have come to believe and help other people discover is that there is this relationship that you have toward your body in terms of healing, on a healing path or not. And what I mean by that is when you can see your body not as an enemy preventing you from achieving your goal, right? That goal would probably be, having a completely pain-free existence and doing all the things you want to do. And if you can see your body not as a barrier to that, like an enemy preventing you from achieving that, but instead see it as like a partner, right? Like I sometimes, if my body's, if I'm having trouble in certain areas, I think like, oh, what would I do for a friend who's also having trouble in their life? I would be there for them. I would work with them. I would certainly not be working against them. And so that's the kind of the idea is that, your body and your mind, really want the same things. You want to be fully capable. You want to be fully, mobile and strong and healthy and feeling good. And so when you can approach your body in that way, then a lot of things that seemed kind of insurmountable at first, you can start to see how there's little steps that you can take to, on that journey.
Yeah, that's amazing. I love that you describe it as a journey because it is a journey. And, some doctors will say, well, life is a degenerative process. It's just this journey, into degeneration. But the fact is that we do have to care for our bodies as we age and as we go through time, and the spine does degenerate, over time. And so finding a way to stay strong, to prevent injury, or to treat, a condition through proper movement and proper technique really can extend your life and enable you to do things that you want to do. And that connection to your mind, that mindset of, yes, I can, instead of I cannot do that, is really a fundamental mind shift. And I think, hearing Susan's experiences in yoga and working with you, it's the mind, the mind body connection, the mind telling you, it's not about the perfect pose. It's about using this technique to make me strong and capable.
Mm-hmm.
Susan, what would you say to someone who is struggling to find the time or the motivation to prioritize their spinal care in the way that you did?
Yeah. I think, I think it's certainly much easier when you're totally debilitated. I think it's a little harder when you just have a little ache and pain here and there, but when you're totally debilitated, it's a bit easier because you really recognize that you have to make this a priority. And I know we always talk about everything in life. There's so many things that we'd like to prioritize, but if you don't have your body, you can't physically do what you want to do, the activities of daily living, you really, it really impacts your life. So for me, it was basically putting a yellow sticky on my mirror in my bathroom to say, body first. So you have to put a lot of things aside and just give it the time that you need in terms of your activities. You may have to cut back on certain parts of the job that you'd like to do, or certain career moves you'd like to make, or certain volunteer jobs you'd like to do. You just really have to make the time for it.
Yeah, I love that, Susan, the sticky notes or reminders, or, set little alarms. And one of the things, Susan, that you told me about were these sort of 15 minutes for 15-day challenges that Sytera had created for folks. And that's always a good thing, as if you're kicking off a new resolution or a new goal setting moment in your time, setting some new goals for yourself. The time commitment doesn't have to be enormous. And I think, I think you've seen that, Susan, and Sytera, you've been very successful in creating these, sort of 15 minutes a day, just a few, key movements, or a few key, I don't want to say stretches, maybe poses. I'm not sure what the right lingo is.
Stretches, yeah.
Just a few key stretches. Tell me how you came up with that approach, Sytera.
Yeah, so I think what I found after working in this field for decades is that a lot of people kind of hold yoga up on a pedestal, or kind of hold this goal of like achieving this. They make it sort of like, or I do too, of course, make it sort of such a big thing to chew that it seems like, how could I even get there? So why bother? Right. And so the idea of 15 minutes for 15 days, it almost sounds like it's too good to be true. Right. But it really is the idea of like training your body. So what we tend to think about when we talk about training the body is that there's, we tend to think, okay, if I'm training for a marathon or for a 5K or whatever it is, that's training your body. But what people don't understand, and what took me a long time to understand, is what I do with my body on a regular basis. That's really what's training your body. So most of us have trained our bodies to sit really well, or to, do maybe, that elliptical move, or, whatever, forward and back kind of thing. But there's a whole range of movements that we just don't do anymore. I mean, like, you see kids exploring, the world with their bodies in all these different ways. And we just don't do that anymore, right? Like, who has the time for, to spin around the room? You know what I mean? Yeah. So it's the idea of like, how do you incorporate complementary moves into your daily life? Like, very easy way to do it is to just set aside 15 minutes of your day to incorporate the different kind of moves. And that little bit of time will offset like hours worth of sitting, right? So it's just finding like, what is it that works for you? And of course, like, I use what I incorporate in my 15 minutes for 15 days is, myofascial release work, right? With the little balls. And so the myofascial release actually gives people that immediate feedback that they can feel like something just happened, and then they're ready to stick with it. Because when you can feel the results of your efforts, like right away, like you're like, oh, this really is working, I'll keep going. And so it's those little things that like really do help, that greater mindset toward, getting healthy and strong.
Yeah. I love how you say that when you do, it doesn't take a big action to get a big result. And so when people see results, when they're feeling better, and it wasn't hard or scary, and it didn't take all day, then that's very encouraging, right? I think that's the encouraging thing. And I just love that idea of 15 minutes a day. It's just, everybody has 15 minutes to do this.
Right.
And what a big impact that can make, on the rest of your day.
Yes.
And so I love that. You mentioned a word, Sytera, myofascial release. Can you tell us what that means?
Sure. So your body has connective tissue in it from the cellular level to your organs, your bones, your muscles, everything. So this connective tissue, you can think of it like as a 3D spider web in your body. So that's why, sometimes if you've ever been to physical therapy for like, say, a knee problem, sometimes that physical therapist won't touch your knee. They'll simply work on your hip. Why is that? It's because everything is connected via this connective tissue. So the myofascial release work, and you get that in your yoga practice. You're getting the myofascial stretching, you're getting the load bearing so that you have that both the stretch and the strengthening happening. But there's this element too of massage. So like, why is the massage after you get a massage, you just feel like, oh, you're like melting, right? It's because they've manually worked that fascia, okay, that connective tissue that connects the muscles together. And so what happens then is when you incorporate something like myofascial massage with your yoga practice, you get that immediate feedback of relaxing and that stress release and the feeling of looseness that you get right after a massage. But you're also building you're building a foundation for greater health and mobility for the rest of your life, right? Not just massaging and loosening things up, but you're also getting the fascia to reorganize itself so that the outcome over time is you will be out of that chronic pain. And I can't imagine anything better. I mean, like, I need it for myself. That's why I do this.
Yeah.
So it's a real good benefit.
Kind of reminds me of the song we all learned when we were little, the knee bones connected to the hip bone, the hip bones connected to the backbone. And that's true. It's a chain, right? It's a chain. And those joints are all connected to each other by what we call soft tissue. So the muscles, the fascia, the tendons, the ligaments. And when that stuff gets stuck, then it tugs on the joints, and that's therein you get pain. So, one of the simple things that people can do is to really mind those soft tissue areas through massage, through rolling techniques, myofascial release, to alleviate the tension that then is pulling on joints and causing joint pain. It's really amazing. I know, Susan, you've told me that the rolling that you do with Sytera has been, maybe you use the word addictive or I can't live without it, or I think I've heard you say things like,
yeah.
And
all of the above,
all of the above, and possible to even take on the road with you. So if you're traveling or you're going somewhere, it's not impossible to continue with some level, of caring for yourself while maybe you're traveling or you're in a new setting.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's so important to me that I take the little balls, the naughty balls, with me. And I use them in planes. I put them in the lower part of my back when I'm on a plane ride, or if I'm in a car. And then Sytera taught us the other day how we can even put it under our leg while we're driving. And I tried that.
Nice.
Yeah, she's always teaching us new ways, but I do. And they're so easy to carry around. I would love the idea of bringing my yoga mat, but sometimes it's just too heavy. Right. So the balls, the myofascial balls that she calls Mr. and Mrs. Naughty.
Naughty and nice, I think. Naughty,
yes. They come with me now wherever I go, because it's just as Sytera said, once you get to understand your body and you get to understand the different yoga moves and all of that, you can just do them every day for just 15 minutes, when you're traveling, even if you don't have a full hour to take to do some yoga.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah. One of the things that we do in the foundation is we try to put useful information out into, bite-sized nuggets that people can easily consume. And one of our most highly viewed and highly utilized pieces of information that we've produced in the last year is this infographic where we say, easy yoga poses for back pain. And it's like, what is it? It's four stretches that you can do every day to alleviate back pain. And, there's just such a huge need and desire out there to learn these simple techniques that you can do at home, if you're traveling or even, at work. There are ways you can incorporate these in to alleviate back pain and feel better. And And why does that matter? Well, it matters for obvious reasons. But one thing that people don't realize is that 100 million Americans are affected by neck and back conditions every year. Low back pain is the number one reason why people miss work every year, more so than the common cold. I mean, we're in the COVID pandemic right now, so maybe the common cold isn't really around, but back pain is around for sure, and continues to be a major economic impact to workers in the United States. So addressing the challenge of keeping your back feeling good and being healthy has implications for us personally, but also for our country and our wider social and economic impact. It's pretty astounding. I think we'll have to invite Sytera to come in and do some myofascial demonstrations for us on our media platform, Sytera. It sounds like that's something, and definitely we will have in our future, I hope.
Oh, I love that. Yes.
Susan, one of the things that we say in the foundation is that, the journey to spinal healthcare is not one that can be made alone. And the Spine Health Foundation is here to help people. And we talk about it as a journey, right? So, if you go to see a doctor, they make a diagnosis, they may, perform a treatment. And so the healthcare system has kind of done its part. And now you've got to do your part, right? So it's an ongoing maintenance thing, right? So it's not a one and done situation where you have a condition, you get the diagnosis, you've got some treatment, and then it's done. That's not how our bodies work. So Susan, you have found yoga to be your ongoing maintenance, caring for yourself, staying out of pain routine. Have you talked with your doctors about this? Have you had to do follow up with healthcare, and how has that looked for you?
Well, it's not, I would say that I have followed up with one or two of my doctors, and I have informed them, when they saw me after my initial spasms 8 years ago, when they asked, should we try some steroids or something like that, because it wasn't bad enough to look at surgery. I did eventually, I guess it was after a few years, have a revisit, and I did tell them how incredible the yoga was for me, and the mindfulness of yoga in terms of teaching you how to teach your own body to relax. Because I think a part of back pain is also understanding that your stress, we put stress into different parts of our body. So I did explain that I was seeing a specialist for my hip and for my back, because I also have hip issues.
Not uncommon for back. Yeah. Back is connected to hip. So I really haven't, I must say, in the last few years, I really haven't seen anyone in the last 4 years, but I think I'm due for a checkup. So, I think that's amazing that in 4 years, you haven't needed to see a doctor for your back pain. That's what we're talking about here. I mean, that's the success. That's the overcome. That's what makes you a spinal champion. You have found a treatment that works for you, and it's the yoga, and it's awesome. That's fantastic. Sytera, many doctors in the spine health field advise their patients to do core strengthening and core training. And they say, find a yoga program or find a Pilates program so that you keep your cores strong, and that supports your back. I'd love to share with our listeners some advice you have on how folks can find the right yoga practice for them. You are located in McLean, Virginia, but not everybody listening here is local to the Washington, D.C. metro area. So how can you help people that are in other parts of the country understand what to look for, in finding a good yoga studio, particularly if they're experiencing back or neck pain? How do they know that they're in a place that's right for them?
That's a really good question. And there's kind of, I would say, sort of multi layers to it. So first of all, luckily, one of the good things is about the day and age that we're in, there's a lot of stuff that's, on Zoom and virtual. And so you can tune in, even though you're not local to, our studio at SyteraYoga, and work with the naughty balls and the amazing release work that you do, that 15 minutes for 15 days, which is fantastic, right? But, to just sort of like start, blindly. So, okay, like you said before, you kind of went through the process of like working, if you have some kind of chronic injury or issue, you go to your doctor says, well, it's not bad enough for surgery. We could do, shots or something like that. But, and then what, right? Then what do you do? There should be, some kind of bridge. And oftentimes physical therapy is sort of the beginning of that bridge. But then the yoga, of course, is a really good way to, kind of implement some of that stretching, strengthening, the things that you were just talking about, especially for core. But one of the things that you were talking about with Susan just a second ago that I think is particularly important when it comes to talking about yoga and finding a yoga studio and a yoga teacher who's experienced is that most of the time, the issue with why you really can feel like you can never get past that chronic pain that you're experiencing. A lot of it is exactly what Susan was just saying, that like, how do you relax? So I have people that come to my class. I never say the word relax. You're in a yoga class and I don't tell you to relax. You want to know why? You don't know how to relax. That's why you're there. And what I'm talking about, not necessarily like chilling out on your couch, but how do you actually physically relax in your body? And the reason why it's so hard for us, those of us that have had some kind of injury or major chronic issue in the body, is because oftentimes our mind is telling us we need to protect that area of the body. And that's not wrong. That's your body and your mind really trying to do what it can to help you get better. The problem is we don't then have a moment where the body then says, okay, I'm done with that. I'm ready for the next thing. You have to basically train your body again how to relax for full movement. And it's only when you get that full movement that really healing starts to occur, because then you get that full slide and glide, like the muscles and the joints and the bones will start having a good relationship again. If it stays locked and is never able to move because you're stressed, then you're not actually going to get that recovery that you're trying so hard. And it's the release of trying, but it's so hard to do because people don't understand how to do that. So I would say go to a yoga class where the yoga teacher is describing to you in a way, not saying just like lay down and relax, but instead kind of taking you through a sort of like guided releasing of tension. Then I would say that's the point that you can start that strengthening and stretching. There are programs all over that are probably better for strengthening and stretching your back, your core. But the yoga has this element of, what do I need to be working when? And how much effort should I be putting in? And how do I find balance? And so that's really the magic about like yoga in terms of why it helps us feel better and why it's accessible to everybody when you understand how to take the time to uncover those layers.
Yeah, that's so beautifully stated. And I'm just imagining, sort of that myofascial release that you talk about, and, the muscles and the connective tissue gliding, hydration is important, and that gliding, action happens and the muscles are being oxygenated and things are flowing. The movement is good. And it's all just gentle and so important to have those actions happen to protect your spine and strengthen your spine. And when you have that happening, really you feel so empowered that the mind just feels like you can do anything, right? Your body feels strong and you feel like you can tackle anything that's coming your way. And that's just so amazing. So amazing. Sytera, you've talked about these naughty balls. I understand that that's an invention of yours. Can you tell me a little bit about what brought you to that invention, and just a little description of what those naughty balls are? And then we are going to get you on our platform demonstrating this.
Awesome. I'd love that. Yeah. So I didn't invent it in the sense of, there's myofascial release tools out there that have been around for a long time. I just created a product that's actually feels good to use. So people will use it on a more regular basis. And I try to present the information in such a bite-sized way that's incredibly easy to understand. So again, I don't use nebulous terms. I don't even, like I said, use the word relax, because it's like people are like, I don't really know what you mean. I think I'm relaxed. Aren't I relaxed? And they're really like this, you know? So I just try to have it be really relatable, really easy to use. And I think that's the effectiveness of it, actually. But yeah, so the balls themselves, like I mentioned before, they give you that sensation of being massaged. So it's immediately relaxing. And then you get to that baseline of, now that your pelvis is relaxed, or whatever area that you happen to be working on, then you can start to stretch and strengthen. And then you cap it all off with massaging again with the ball, right? So it's like a little dessert. So it's really the combination of I think really what the method, the naughty ball method, the why it's different is it's really not just, you know, laying on a ball and rolling around, but it's really kind of exploring all those different layers in a way that's very accessible to people. And you can do it in 15 minutes.
That's awesome.
So yeah.
Fantastic. Susan, I know that you've been doing some virtual classes with Sytera. Mm-hmm. And Sytera, when the pandemic hit, you moved to being able to offer some virtual classes. Can you both talk to me about what that's like for somebody who maybe, you know, is hearing what we're saying and getting excited about, you know, doing a yoga class, but maybe doesn't know how to do that, you know, through the internet, or is maybe afraid to do that? Like, don't I need to be in a class? Don't I need an instructor to, you know, sort of make corrections on me so I don't hurt myself while I'm trying to make myself feel better? You know, if you could both talk about what that experience has been like. And Susan, you've been going to Sytera for years now, so maybe making that transition to digital classes maybe wasn't so hard, but there are advantages also by having the digital classes. So that's been, I think, a surprise outcome of the pandemic.
Oh, it's been, I mean, being able to go digital with Sytera's classes really was a lifesaver. I mean, I tried to go for, I think, the first week or so without, because I didn't think I could actually do it. I'm not good with the computer and the virtual and all of that, just psychologically. And I realized after a week, oh my goodness, I'm not going to survive. And it was so easy to follow Sytera, I guess, because I've also been a student of hers for so many years, but there were new teachers that came along, new yoga instructors, and it was not very hard to follow them. I mean, not very hard at all. And my goodness, it's so easy from your own home. You just practice in a room that's comfortable for you. And all the teachers, Sytera and all of her teachers, they're so easy to follow. And you can shout out even on Zoom if you don't understand anything. Or as in class, you know, we're usually pretty respectful and don't shout out in the middle of class. But after class, we'd always, you know, ask for a little help with this, or what did she mean by that? Or why does this work better? So anyway, it's been wonderful. Been a lifesaver.
So great to hear that. It's so great to hear that. Sytera, I'd love to hear your reflection on that. And, you know, Susan is somebody who has been using the yoga practice for years to stay out of pain. What about somebody who maybe is new coming into yoga practice?
Yeah, so if you're brand new coming into a yoga practice, especially on Zoom, can be really scary. It's sort of like learning a foreign language with somebody who, you know, is a native speaker and you've never done it and you're trying to like learn through a book or something, right? It's just very hard to do. What I would personally recommend, of course, going on, you know, getting personal recommendations is always, you know, since the beginning of this industry, I think has been, you know, the best way to go. But that being said, you know, I would personally ask if you can do either like a one-on-one consultation or a private session. And most yoga teachers and yoga studios are going to help you with that. Because again, it really is about relationships in the sense that the yoga teacher needs to hear your story. You need to tell your story to the yoga teacher, not because that yoga teacher has any kind of expertise that a doctor would have necessarily, right? It's not to like, so that they can fix you or things like that. It's just that your yoga teacher is your guide, right? It's sort of like having a buddy on your side, right? So they're not going to necessarily do the work for you, of course, but they're there to help guide you, And because they're there to help guide you, they need to understand where you're coming from, right? So I personally would say, find a yoga teacher that is willing to do that with you, because then you know that that person, that person's going to have a certain level of expertise and a certain amount of understanding about, really this is like, about relationships and trust, right? You've got to be working with someone who can help you trust your own body, right? And there has to be that exchange going on. So I think, I would personally recommend you reach out personally to a yoga teacher or yoga studio that you like and see if you can get that one-on-one consultation in some way, shape, or form. And then that person could potentially, say, you can do everything, but don't twist, or whatever it could be, like whatever your particular need is. There's so many nuances to it that I think that personal, connection is important.
And do you find that you're able to do some of that personal connection over the internet in your
That's
virtual
a really good question. So like you mentioned, we pivoted to online just like everybody else, or not just like everybody else, but like a lot of people did, right? Who are still around. And one of the things that we opted for right away, so we said, okay, should we opt for amazing video quality and et cetera, or should we opt for maybe a little bit lower? I mean, I think, of course, our video quality is awesome, but a little bit compromised video quality so that we can still have that exchange, right? Because just plain old internet bandwidth says that you can't have both.
Right.
Okay.
Of course.
So we opted right away for keeping that relationship and that exchange. Because we realize, I mean, after being in this industry for, 25 years, that personal exchange is so important to healing. So you need somebody to feel like they have your back, right?
Yeah.
And you really get that on a personal level. And so there's a community aspect to it. There's, seeing other people that are also on that journey of self-discovery and self-healing and self-care. All of those things like help reinforce those, positive relationships and behaviors toward your own body. So I would say yes, as long as you find a studio that's doing that exchange so that you can, like Susan was saying, people can unmute themselves in the middle of class and say, ho, 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 wait up, what's going on here, right? And a teacher who's experienced, can manage that, right? So it's about those are some of the qualities that I would certainly recommend looking for.
That's fantastic. It's really, really great advice and insight, Sytera. And congratulations on pivoting and being able to be there for I would say your students, but your patients, your community.
Yeah, we actually grew our community. We took on a second location and got 2 other communities on board. So yeah, so we actually grew in the pandemic.
Isn't that amazing? I think that's a testament. That's a testament to how good the work that you are doing is and how effective it is for people. We saw in the foundation with the pandemic, all kinds of back problems sneaking in, people teleworking, people working from home, laying on the sofa, laying in bed on their laptops, holding bad postures for long periods of time, not going to their gyms or their yoga classes, and not, sort of fitness routines falling out of place. So, I think that there was probably more need than ever to have your presence in their lives. So that I'm not surprised by that, but I'm so proud of you and congratulate you on that growth.
I just hope that people understand that something that Sytera said reminded me, and I just wanted to say that when you have any kind of a back pain, when you start yoga, you do have to remember that you have to be careful. You do have to remember that you're going to have that pain wherever it is. And so you need to work in ways around that pain. Don't hit it head on and don't injure yourself, because I did re-injure myself a few times in the very beginning. And that was not Sytera's fault. That was more my fault because I wasn't being careful with my injury. But you have to take the time to learn that, to know sort of, okay, where should I be really super careful and not do this, that, and the other thing? And then I would consult with her about it too. When it happened the first time, I was like, oh, Sytera, what do you think happened here? So it's important to keep that in mind.
And that relationship with your instructor, I almost think of your yoga, your yogi, your guru as, as a coach, right?
Yeah.
And to say, I think I did too much. How do I get through this? Yeah, that's great. Great advice, Susan. Sytera, any closing?
Yeah, so I think, just kind of reiterating what Susan was saying, there's, one of the biggest questions, that I have for people is, what am I supposed to be feeling?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Or, well, how do I know if I'm overstretching? Right? And of course, those are questions your yoga teacher can't answer. But your yoga teacher can help you realize or recognize that there are patterns in your nervous system that are sending you certain signals. So which signals, in which way should you be paying attention? So meaning, like, for instance, whenever I have people doing the body rolling stuff, right? Getting on a ball and putting it in an area, if there's an area of particular tension and you feel like you're gonna wince, and you feel that retraction of your nervous system and that feeling of pulling away, then that's your body telling you something really important. That's your body telling you you've hit a spot that needs to be left alone for the moment. So my favorite thing to tell people is you can, and Susan will know, I always come up with silly little yoga puns, right? So one of them is you can leave that address, but don't leave the neighborhood. So if you're like in an area and you're just like, your nervous system's giving you that feedback, right? And you don't know if you can trust your nervous system yet. That's where your yoga teacher comes in to say, like, how am I supposed to be breathing here? And what should this feel? But then when you start to slowly say, okay, I'm not going to leave the neighborhood, but I'll shift off that address. And then your body can start to parse out, like, what am I supposed to be feeling here? What is good for me? What is productive sensation? And what is hurting myself? And those are complicated. It takes time. Yeah. It just takes time to go through it. And it doesn't take a lot of time, but it takes a consistent amount of time. So you can do that 15 minutes for 15 days and you'll notice steady progress. But it's that, making that little bit of time regularly that'll make a difference.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's a journey, as we say, right? That's fantastic. Well, Susan and Sytera, it was an absolute pleasure having this conversation with the two of you. It's impactful when stories like yours are shared because it tells others out there that there is life beyond challenging diagnoses and injuries. I think you two are shining examples of just that. Thank you so much for your time. And I look forward to hearing from you again soon. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
At the National Spine Health Foundation, something we believe in most is providing hope for recovery through sharing stories of success and expertise. It isn't always easy to find someone to relate to, even though 100 million adults suffer from neck or low back pain each year. To hear more stories of Spinal Champions and access educational materials about spine health, visit us at spinehealth.org. If you're interested in supporting our show financially, you can contribute at the link provided. Thank you for listening. The information and views expressed in the Get Back to It podcast are intended for informational purposes and should not be used as a substitute for professional medical advice or to replace the services of trained healthcare providers. To view the National Spine Health Foundation's full disclaimer, visit spinehealth.org.